Hello, this is Charles Scoville, your Golden Harvest agronomist with your Agronomy in Action Focus Friday. So, this week, a number of different topics that I would like to cover. Talk a little about suckers on corn plants, rapid growth syndrome, talk about heat units. Are we ahead or behind? Where exactly are we? And also, starting to see some manganese deficiency out there. Talk a little about that. I want to briefly touch on the upcoming fungicide application on corn and soybeans, and want to wrap up today's conversation talking a little bit about lightning bugs and what that might mean now that we're seeing them flying around the countryside. So let's jump right in and talk about suckers on corn plants. So it was really kind of a breath of fresh air. I got a phone call from an old friend of mine, Mark McClintock. He's listening to these podcasts, and he said, Charles, I'm seeing a lot of suckers on corn plants, and that might be something you want to address in your podcast. So here we go. So in general, the good news is that we are seeing a lot of sucker plants, those little plants that kind of start up on the side of the base of those corn plants out there. And in my mind, everything I've talked to and about over the years is those are actually a good thing to have. What it means truly is those corn plants have more energy than they know what to do with. A little extra fertilizer there that they're not utilizing the main plant, and so they go ahead and push that extra energy into additional plants. And as the season goes on, if they do end up running short on different nutrients, that, of course, is the very first place they're going to pull those nutrients from to feed that main stalk, to feed that ear and make yield at the end of the day. So having a little extra fertilizer in that bank account there in that plant, to me, is never a bad thing. And if it doesn't use it, it's still going to break down back into the soil and just kind of help recycle those nutrients a little bit. So, like to see the fact that we're seeing a lot of those out there this year, and I think that's going to help us as we go through the season. Topic 2 I want to talk about is rapid growth syndrome. So, if you are driving around the countryside and you start looking at some of these cornfields, you are going to notice scattered yellow individual plants throughout a field. And if you were to get out of your truck and go out there in those fields, what you would see is a couple things. That plant, it's the inside, the very most recent opened up leaves that are bright yellow. And it's because they were wrapped up so tight, almost buggy whipped here a couple of days ago. And now they're finally unraveling, and it's going to take them a day or so to get that chlorophyll and that green color back into that plant. But you're going to notice it looks like this field is doing this for a period of time, a week to 10 days. And you say, why aren't those plants recovering? And in reality, each plant that's doing this is recovering within a day or two, but you get multiple scattered plants that start this yellow turning at different days. So different plants make that field look like it has a larger problem with rapid growth than it does. It's simply cosmetic at this point in time. We were hot and dry especially. We got that rain. That plant just shot right up there with that rain when it did get it. And in many cases, it just couldn't unravel quick enough. And now it's relaxing a little bit. It is starting to unravel, and we're getting that yellow color. It can also be chemically derived too. You get the right type of chemistry out there that dings that plant a little bit, wraps that plant up into a buggy whipping, and you'll see that same scattered rapid growth type syndrome in those fields too. But again, gonna outgrow it, not anything to worry about, but it is unique that we're seeing it this time of the year. Want to mention heat units as well. I'm getting some questions out there. Are we ahead? Are we behind? So I went on to the web and took a look. And our 5-year average for right now should be around 853 heat units accumulated since the 1st of May. Today here in mid-Michigan, we are at 782 heat units. So that puts us about 70 heat units or 2 to 3 days behind the 5-year average. Certainly not anything I'm worried about at this point in time. We got a lot of season yet to go, but as that goes, we're good up till 86 degrees. After 86, of course, those plants start to shut down, and certainly if some of those plants were wrapped up and kind of under some extreme drought stress, that doesn't help them take much advantage of those heat units either. But I think a lot of crop left to go. My bigger concern is, we've got these plants in many fields that are, knee high or better, and then some of those plants that didn't get the moisture early on and now are just emerging. Those plants are plants that are going to react a lot like plants that might have been planted in June. And so it's going to be a race to the end on some of those plants to get them mature and dry enough to hit black layer, that 32% moisture, by the time we hit that first frost. So certainly a little worried for some of those late emerging plants. And there's a lot of those out there as we drive across the countryside. But we just need to be ready to manage that wetter corn in parts of those fields and just set expectations out there for what is to come. Would also like to address seeing a lot of yellow corn, yellow soybeans on some of those low muck fields. And anybody that raises crops on mucks understands that, we're typically dealing with a higher pH type out there, and that high pH is not allowing those plants to absorb the manganese in the soil. So if we walk out there and look at those plants, you're going to see interveinal chlorosis, or in other words, you're going to see in the soybeans bright green veins in those leaves and yellow all around the edges of those veins. In the corn, you're going to see yellow striping and green veins as well. So because the pH is off, it doesn't help, of course, to put anything in the soil. We've got to treat that with a foliar manganese, Mn manganese out there. And the hardest part about this, we see this all the time, is it is not usually a single treatment. We can green them up with a single treatment. A lot of times we're putting 3, 4, 5 applications of manganese out there in a year just to keep these plants green, keep them photosynthesizing, to, at the end of the day, keep them putting yield in those plants. So don't give up on those fields. Those muck fields are so productive that we've got such an opportunity to capitalize on that. Let's make sure we keep them green, keep the manganese foliar applications out there, corn and soybeans. Briefly want to hit on fungicide because we're, of course, we're past most of that V5 stage where we could have done an early fungicide, but it was announced this week that tar spot was identified in the state of Iowa. They have been dry too. So we need to start being vigilant of thinking about and keeping our eyes open for tar spot here over the next couple of weeks to months, and be ready to treat if we do see it. Keep in mind you want to kind of spit on that leaf and scratch on that black spot to make sure it's not just the remnants of flies on there, that it truly is tar spot. But none found in Michigan yet I'm aware of, but we're going to be vigilant. We'll keep our eye on it. Don't let down your guard just because it's been dry. At the end of the day, though, we've seen for years tar spot or no tar spot. The reality is if we can get out there, a R1 or a green silk timing of a fungicide application certainly seems to be one of those things that pays off in most situations. So I highly recommend those R1 applications of fungicide with or without tar spot. But boy, when we have tar spot, we know we get an even greater return on our investment for those. If we're thinking about soybeans, that R3 stage, we should be starting flowering right now, of course. We're past summer solstice, past the 21st of June. So we got a little bit of time before we get to that R3 stage for fungicide on soybeans, that 3/8 of an inch pod at the third node down from the top of that plant. But time to get product on order, time to get product in the shed to be thinking about those applications. So to wrap up today, I do want to mention real quick, I looked out the window last night and sure enough, I saw my first lightning bug. And say, well, who cares about lightning bugs? They really don't affect our crops. And that's true. They absolutely don't. But what's unique is that the timing of the lightning bug starting to fly tends to correspond with the same timing of our corn rootworm beetles hatching in the soil. So what does the hatch mean? That means typical insect, egg, larvae, pupa, adult. 4 stages of all insects, right? So we back up to that and say the hatch. So we're going from egg to larva. So larva is the damaging stage for these actual root worms, the larvae, feeding on those roots. So that tells me that root feeding is going to be beginning now. And if you've got corn-on-corn situations, you don't have the right protection for trait and or soil-applied insecticide, give this 3 weeks or so of feeding. They're going to pupate, and then they're going to emerge after they finish their pupation as adults and feed on silks later on. But boy, another 2-3 weeks, we should be able to start digging some of those corn plants, evaluating our corn rootworm management strategy. And then if we're seeing a lot of fed on roots, making sure that we're preparing our expectations for harvest, for standability, for nutrient uptake, all those things that can be the downfall of rootworm feeding throughout the year. So now is the time to start thinking about corn rootworm, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that as the summer continues. So with that, I certainly hope everybody has a good weekend ahead. I have some plans maybe to celebrate for our 4th of July weekend coming up next week. And again, this is Charles Scoble, your Golden Harvest agronomist with your Focused Friday Agronomy in Action. Have a great weekend.